Hello, everybody. Welcome to On the Homefront. John Murphy here. Very happy to share some life and time with you on the radio. We're on WILI. We're also on WICH in Norwich, New London, and WECS in Willimantic. So we're very happy to have you with us. And we're also available on the WILI radio YouTube channel. You can get any of our shows there 24/7. Our program today will look at the local community. The Taste to Towns a local celebration is going on right now. It connects restaurants between Mansfield and Windham and the whole Willimantic area. It's a great annual celebration. We'll talk about that with Chris McNaboe and also David Wollner for the second part of the show. We'll also have an arts calendar with news and events. And we're going to lead off with Neighbors, a wonderful local newspaper that's been here for many, many years. Tom King is the publisher and editor. He was recently on Wayne's morning show, and it went over so well, they talked about maybe having Neighbors on once in a while during the year so you can connect to this great local media resource. So I'm going to share an edited version of Tom's conversation with Wayne to introduce you to Neighbors. It's all over the region for free. It's a good resource, and this conversation is worth some of your time. Enjoy.
It's my pleasure to welcome back into our studio a guy that used to host The Garden Show here at WILI. It's Tom King. He's now the editor and publisher of the Neighbors paper, which is distributed through a number of outlets locally. Tom, good morning. Thanks for coming in today. And for the folks who don't know what I'm talking about, what is the Neighbors paper?
Thank you for having me, Wayne. The Neighbors paper is a publication I started sporadically back in the 80s and 90s a little bit, but it really didn't get going until 2003. And this issue here with you on the cover from the Boombox Parade.
What year was that?
That was 2003.
Okay.
And I was just looking at this, and on the page 2, there's a nice little article. I was wondering if you would mind if I read it.
Please do.
It's from Alexander Taylor, Sandy Taylor, who was the Curbstone Corps director. He wrote this. It's short, but it really sums a lot of things up. Dear neighbors, neighbor, the word is derived from the Anglo-Saxon word neighbor, literally nigh dweller, a person or thing near another. But as well as denoting nearness and distance, it is also the connotation of closeness of association and warmth, as in the adjective neighborly. Will Rogers used to say that there's nothing like the good old days, and probably never was. Still, I don't think I'm the only one who feels a diminishment of neighborliness and the closeness of association we used to feel from participation in civic clubs and volunteer organizations whose desire was to promote the public good. One reason we at Curbstone are excited about being an arts partner in the Windham Area Poetry Project is that we revisit that deep participation in the community that once was so common. That participation is what Robert D. Putnam calls our social capital in his book, Bowling Alone, The Collapse and Revival of American Community. Bowling alone is a metaphor for our becoming increasingly disconnected from family, friends, neighbors, and social structures, and is an intriguing and entertaining statistical study of how our society is becoming unglued. Mr. Putnam notes that America's social capital was at an ebb 100 years ago at the turn of the last century, reduced by urbanization, industrialization, and vast immigration that uprooted Americans from their friends, social institutions, and families, a situation similar to today's. Faced with this challenge, the country righted itself, and within a few decades, the country created numerous social institutions, including the Red Cross, Boy Scouts, the Knights of Columbus, the Urban League, Hasada, and the YMCA. However, since the 70s, we have been more and more bowling alone. Mr. Putnam argues that we can learn from the experience of the earlier decades as we work to rebuild our eroded social capital, but that it won't happen without the concerted creativity and energy of Americans nationwide. At his talk in June 2000 at the University of Hartford, sponsored by the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, Mr. Putnam wittily noted that this rebuilding of social capital, which peaked in the 70s, was not created at Harvard, but by grassroots work and communities, e.g. our neighbors. It is impossible to summarize all the interesting insights in this book in a short space, and I urge everyone to read it. I get no commission from Simon & Schuster, but I want to mention one last interesting point he made, that people taking part in rebuilding their communities through associations achieve greater life satisfaction and actually live longer on the average than those who do not. It is also interesting to note that much of the vast data that Mr. Putnam draws upon to illustrate his point was found at our own Roper Center at the University of Connecticut. Mr. Putnam's bowling alone forces us to think not only about ways we can rebuild our social capital, but also how we can creatively bridge the gaps between different groups, whether ethnic, religious, or social, to work together to be good neighbors. That's why I like the name of this magazine, and I know that its editor, Tom King, is a good neighbor in the best senses of the word. He helps provide the social glue that can bring our community together. With sincere appreciation, Alexander Hamilton. And that, he wrote that over 20 years ago.
Always good to get the morning started off with words by the late, great Sandy Taylor. Tom King, our guest this morning, the editor and publisher of Neighbors Magazine. I'm holding the current edition, the January-February 2025 edition. It's 24 pages long. Has the number of pages in Neighbors increased over the years, and is this the biggest you've ever had?
It has slowly increased to about 24. I've done a few 28 pagers, but 24 pages is about as big as I can get.
Who are your writers, and how do you get them?
Well, that's a good question, Wayne. The writers have kind of come along over the years. I have like Loretta Roble, Dennis Pierce was writing for a long time. Delia Berlin.
Is that Dennis from the Yukon Dining Services?
Yes.
Okay.
Dennis Pierce wrote for over 10 years about local farms and farmers in the area. A very popular writer and very popular articles. He recently wrote his last article for the November-December issue, and because he's moving on to other things, and so fortunately he suggested a woman that I contact from the Yukon Extension, and she's taking over. So she wrote her first article in this current issue. Her name is Rebecca Toms. We have many writers, local writers like Phoebe Godfrey, who was also a professor at Yukon, and they've come. Like Loretta and Dennis and several others have been writing for years and years, and I just get emails from people and say, I wrote this, can you print it? I'll say, well, let me take a look at it. And basically, I just take everything the community sends me and I put it in the paper. I don't do a lot of editing or anything. Fortunately, several years ago, a gentleman from Stores, Gary Cass, who was a professional copy editor and retired, said, hey, I really like your paper. Can I help you do some copy editing? And I said, sure. So I run most of the articles through him. He makes a couple of corrections. He checks facts and things like that. And so he's been very helpful. So we probably have, I would say, 8 or 9 regulars who write almost every issue. And then we have people that write one issue and then never again.
And it seems like many, if not most, are senior citizens. Is that because maybe they've got more time to write?
It could be, and that's something I love it. I love that a lot of people who are writing are my age, and they've had decades of time to think about things and find realize what's important to them or important to the world. And so they'll write about that, or they'll travel and write some travel articles, things like that. But I've been trying to get more younger writers to write. I've had a few over the years. In fact, I remember back in, I think it was 2004, a teacher from Vinton School said, hey, we have a writing class. Can you come in and talk? And I started to talk to those people. And next thing I know, I had an article from one of her students about the monarch butterfly. It was a beautiful article with photos and everything. A 4th grader wrote it. And it was like, wow, this is fantastic. But I don't get too many of those anymore. I've been trying to contact local schools, and it's kind of an uphill battle. I don't know if the teachers are really busy or whatever, but it's been tough. So I urge if there are grandparents or grandnieces and or grandparents or granduncles, grandaunts, whatever, listening, and you can associate with your younger relatives, urge them to write something and send it to me, because they're so smart, and it's so easy with, you could write, they all have, virtually all of them have computers, they can write up stuff, or they could draw, do some artwork, things like that. I want to have it more of a representative of the community than I love the articles that our older writers write. They're very interesting and very insightful. I'd like to get some opinions and some articles from some younger people.
How big a challenge is it to get the younger generation to not abandon print media, whether it be books, magazines, or newspapers?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I have some grandchildren, and when they come over, a lot of times they head right for my wife's iPad. And they want to play a video game or something like that. That's like, I almost got to, and then they'll fight over the iPad. And it's not easy. It's not easy. I understand it, and phones too. They have phones, and it's like, how do you get these kids off these screens and this and that, and experience things in the real world, in the natural world. Go outside and run around and go out in the woods and things like that, rather than try to look at some video or something on Facebook or something.
So I was looking through the current edition of Neighbors, the newspaper, and let's just start, for example, with how occasionally people put a recipe in there. You've got a recipe in this month's edition.
Yes. Yeah, that's something Dennis started like 10 years ago. He, like you mentioned, he was with Dining Service before he retired at Yukon, and so he's a part-time chef, and he would include a recipe in every issue. And many years ago, I had a couple of recipes, but I don't get too many. But I have no problem if people want to send me a recipe they like, send it in, and I'll print it.
Well, this is an article by Rebecca Toms, who talks about from the ground up buying local in Connecticut, and then she morphs in the middle of the column with recipes for winter squash tamales and gives all the details on how to do that. On that same page, you've got a couple of poetry entries as well, two by Carol Wheelock Hall and one by Jolene Munch Cardoza. So you'd like to publish poetry as well?
Oh, absolutely. And that's coming. I'm getting more poems than I used to. I always would request people to send in poems and short articles, even flash fiction, and that's been slow in coming. But lately, I've been getting more poems, and I usually will have 2 or 3 poems, at least 2 or 3 I can put in every issue.
And that's a good tribute to the aforementioned Sandy Taylor.
Yes.
Curbstone Press did a lot of poetry as well.
Yes.
Here on page 5, I see an astronomy article. Now you got my attention. I like that. Headline, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, as a treehouse decays, what's the price of air? What's that one about?
Yeah, that's Bob Grindle. Bob is a selectman in the town of Hampton. He's been writing for many years for us, and we love his articles. Yeah, he's out in land in Hampton, looking around, looking at the stars, breathing in the fresh air, and it just brings on these thoughts that he has, and he will put into words. And hopefully, a lot of people will read them and read what he has to say, and then just turn off the TV, go outside, and look at the stars, and think about the greater universe, and maybe come away with a different outlook on life.
Tom, I want to ask you about the cover quote of this current edition of the Neighbors paper. It's got some snowflakes surrounding it, and it says, "The master builder chose for a tool not the earthquake nor the lightning to rend and split asunder, not the stormy torrent or the eroding rain, but to the tender snowflakes noiselessly falling through unnumbered seasons, the offspring of the sun and the sea." What was your inspiration for putting that on the cover?
Well, that came from a gentleman, Mr. Hoogley in Tolland. He does calligraphy, and I met him at a farmer's market in Ashford, and we talked, And he asked me if I would consider putting some of his calligraphy in the paper. I said, absolutely. And so he sent me a bunch of stuff, including this from John. This is a quote from John Muir. And
the great naturalist who,
yes,
among other things, was involved in saving the redwood tree out in California.
Yes.
I've been to John Muir Woods up there north of San Francisco, and they talk about that a lot.
Yes. And he said, you go ahead, you could use it. There's no copyrights or anything on any of these phrases. So I will be putting more of them in the paper.
Tom, for the folks who are going, what is this local paper they're talking about this morning? Where do people find it?
Well, we're in about 75 to 80 locations in the greater Willimantic area. We have papers in locations from Bolton to Putnam, Tolland, Willington, all the way down to Lebanon, Columbia, and everywhere in between. We're very big in Mansfield and Willimantic, Windham, Scotland, Hampton, of course, Ashford, Mansfield, Stores, Coventry. All these towns have just about every town. There'll be a stack of papers in the local post office, and some restaurants, the mall. So we're in about, as I said, 75, 80 locations. A friend of ours, Julie Engelke from Wellington, she distributes up in the Stafford area, and also comes down and helps in the Willimantic area. So and that's pretty doesn't change too much, but we added a few, subtract a few if they're not moving, very well in certain places. But it's all in piles in stores and restaurants and the post offices.
So if you see it, don't pass it by. Pick it up, including in Willimantic at Schiller's, CAD Marshall Framing, Clothespin Laundromat, Main Street Cafe, That Breakfast Place, Super Washing Well, the Elm Package Store, A1 Service Station, Blondie's Restaurant, the Willimantic Food Co-op, and the Windham Center Post Office as well. And how much does it cost, Tom?
It's free.
That's the point. That's the point. Tom, with all that garden talk you did maybe 30 or 40 years ago here, are you still a big gardener? Do you do that kind of stuff?
It's funny you mention that, Wayne, because when I did that show, I didn't know a heck of a lot about gardening. I was interested.
Hell of a lot. Yeah.
Period. Right. Yes. But
how did you do the show if you didn't know about gardening? That's the first I'd heard about that.
Yeah. Well, I did. We've done a little gardening, tomatoes, blah blah blah. But not. I don't know. I guess I really felt that if I could just get this thing rolling, I could contact people who could help. And we had a gentleman called, his name was Ed Merritt. He lived right here in Willimantic.
The Yukon Cooperative Extension. Yeah, and many times he was a morning show guest here.
Yes.
Great man.
He was a great guy. And so anyways, once I learned how to get phone calls, people would call in, and I'd ask Ed. Ed would answer the question. It was great. And but unfortunately, Ed, he was not on my I had no payroll. So anyway, he could only do it when he, now and then. He would have been the perfect host for that show, but I mean, it would just have been too time-consuming for him to do.
Well, you've gone from radio now to newspapers, the Neighbors paper. And that being said, on occasion, do we find gardening stories in Neighbors?
Yes, we have a gentleman from Chaplin, Brian Carlson Barnes. He is an avid, he's a designer, a landscape designer. He went to school for that stuff, and he's a horticulturalist. The master gardener. I mean, he knows it all. And he is, usually he's in the center spread, because a lot of his articles have colorful photos of vegetables or flowers or shrubs or whatever, and he has been great. He's in virtually every issue. He does seminars and teaches, and I'm just so happy that he is on board and one of our regular writers.
Well, there's another WILI connection here, and that is that we used to have a terrific morning newscaster named Lynn Mobus, and Lynn's brother Martin was a guest here back in early January, and he's a periodic contributor, and he writes some things with a little different slant. Sometimes the not well-traveled version of some stories, including some stories he told on the air about Israel Putnam. And he's got an article in your current edition as well. Kind of tell what Martin brings to the table, because to me it's a little bit off the mainstream.
Yeah, it's fun because when you read Martin's articles, at least when I read his articles, it's like, is this nonfiction or fiction or somewhere in between?
Historical fiction.
Yeah. Historical kind of fiction, but it's very interesting stuff, and obviously he does a lot of research when he does his writing, and he infuses some of his own, I don't know if his own opinions or his own, words to make it more interesting or whatever, but I really like his articles, and he definitely has a love of local history.
And the current edition has Finding the Source of the Shetucket River, Part 1. Part 1 is pretty long here, including got pictures and the like, and among other things, it says, my search for, quote, which explorer found the source of the Shetucket River comes up empty, so aspiring to win the fame and glory waiting for the fearless explorer who discovers its source, I propose to take on this expedition. Last fall, this intrepid explorer gathered in his compass, sextant, chronometer, and maps and set off on the journey, and he tells that, as with many names from our area, Shetucket comes from a Native American word, and I'm going to butcher this, Nashu Tegu Et, Nashoue Tegwet, which means land between rivers. So, I mean, most people know that the Shetucket kind of begins down by Rec Park, where the Willimantic and the Natchog meet, down by the sewer plant, and then it goes down to Norwich, where it meets up with the Quinnebog and becomes the Thames River. But for folks who like local history and local geography, it's a fascinating read, because there's a lot of things there I didn't know, and I've kayaked and I've canoed on the Shetucket River, but I learned things from that, and that's kind of what the Neighbors is all about. Not just learning about things, learning about local things. You really focus on people that write about things going on locally. That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. There's no national articles that are in the paper. It's locally written, locally read. And that's the way I like it. There was a time when I was there are news services where you can download articles written by whomever, and I did some of those in years past, just as fillers. But lately, I haven't needed it because I get plenty of articles from local folks.
This edition is 24 pages. Does the number of pages, is it reliant on the number of submissions or contributions you have? What if you didn't have enough and maybe you do 20 pages? How do you identify? Is it always going to be 24 pages?
No, it's hard to say, because I send a mass email out to all the writers about roughly 2 weeks before the deadline, and I just ask them, let me know if they're not going to be, if they're going on vacation, blah, 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 if they're not. And a lot of times it comes right down to within a few days of when it actually has to be printed, that I know the amount of articles I have. And so 24 seems to be a good page count. I had to cut back to 20 a few months ago, because they just, I don't know, for whatever reason, having a lot of articles. What newspapers normally do is they base their page count on the advertising. And so if they have, so 60% advertising, 40% editorial, something like that. But I've never done that. So I just make it as big as I need it to be, and then hopefully the advertising will pay for it.
You've also done a lot to promote regional community media and the arts. In fact, you've got an entire page here in the current edition talking about that as well. Just talk about your desire to promote community media and the arts.
Yeah, that is John Murphy's page, and he has he almost every issue has one of his page. John is working very hard to have a regional media groups that interact with each other and with the community to try to get information out to everyone, as many people as possible. John's contacted me to see if we can work something out. So if he can to get some Hispanic pages in the paper, some bilingual pages in the paper. He's working on a grant to help with that and many other things. So he's working very hard with radio stations, with my paper, with the Chronicle, with other outlets, to have a regional effort to contact people and get the word out that needs to be spread.
John was on here last night at WILI. He does his 5 to 6 p.m. on the Homefront program as well. One thing that I noticed as I thumbed through the current edition, 24 pages of it, at least this edition, you don't seem to do much with politics. Is that a conscious decision, or are people not writing about politics? There's been so much talk, especially recently, about what's going on, not just nationally, but locally as well. But I don't see much in here. Is that just this edition, or is that what happens every edition?
That happens every edition. We don't get a lot of political commentary or articles. Once in a while we do, but not a lot. And in fact, I had a couple of phone calls over the years from people, that rant and rave about this. This is just a liberal rag. A bunch of left-wing people put articles in, and I told the person, I said, this one person in particular, I said, look, sir, I don't, seek out any particular political, opinion or anything. People send me articles, I publish them. And if you have an opinion, send me an email, send me a letter, we'll put it in. Oh, no, you didn't want any.
All talk, no action. Yeah, I get it. Well, and the other thing that I would think is that, let's say that you do get a submission of a political nature that has a right or a left-wing slant. If you got that, would you then make an effort to give equal time to get the other side?
Oh, yes, for sure.
And I think that your design more is to talk about what's happening from the local nature. There's a column here written by Ed Silverstein about the new executive director at the Mill Museum. And I think that's something people should know about, because the Mill Museum is a real jewel for our local community here. Aaron Skarzensky just got the gig, so there's a whole article on him and what he's all about. And I have to admit that even though I've had many of the Mill Museum directors on the air here in my studio, I missed the memo that Aaron got the gig. So what you did is, with that column in Neighbor's paper, you kind of got me going on, I got to get Aaron on the air to talk about what's going on at the Mill Museum. How long are you going to be doing this, Tom? I mean, this is something that there's certainly a labor of love.
It is a labor of love. I mean, it started out over 20 years ago to be a part-time retirement job, and it lost money for probably 10 years. Not a lot of money, but I mean, some money. And fortunately, my wife was working as a nurse at Rockville Hospital.
She supports you, huh?
She helped me with it. And so anyways, and then it was making a little bit of money, but now it's virtually it's slightly in the black, and I'm happy with that. I'm really happy with that, because I'll be over at the co-op dropping papers. Someone will come by me. I love your paper. And I'll see someone on the street. I'll have a neighbor's T-shirt on. Someone will come up to me and say, "I love your paper," and that's what it's about.
And it's free.
Yes.
So how do you make money?
Well, the way it's been for many years is, I'm just happy at the end of the month. I take the checks I get from the advertisers. I put them in the bank. I cut my printer a check, done. And so and as long as there's a few bucks left in the checking account, I'm happy.
And the answer to the question also is that you actually have display ads in the Neighbor's paper, which basically helps pay for it, and that's one reason it keeps it free. Also timely, in the January-February 2025 edition of the Neighbor's paper, Pamela Skelly wrote a whole column here in tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. His holiday is Monday, but his birthday was back on January the 15th. And I think something like that, even though it's written by a local person, but obviously Dr. King is not a local person, but something like that is timely. Do you work on getting something timely of a national nature in here that helps tell the story that we should know?
I don't. Pam sent me that article, and the writers sent me articles, on their own, time frame, and I don't write. I don't send them emails saying, "Hey, could you write this article? We got this coming up." They send me articles when they feel they want to.
Well, there's news from South Windham's Guilford Smith Library. There's a column on common sense car care. The variety in here is amazing. There is a page on Connecticut Green Energy News written by Peter Millman, and so it goes, which is available at many local outlets, and it's available for free as well. So if you happen to see one, don't be shy. Pick it up, and better yet, take it home and read it. However, you're also available online. How can people read? That's what people tend to do these days. They don't,
since 2015, we have been online. It costs a little bit of money, but we put the page flip technology as a company in Long Island. I send them the PDF of the paper. They put it online, and so going back to 2015, you can read every issue in color online.
And what's the URL? How do people get to that?
Neighborspaper.com. There's a link. Click on the link, and then away you go. And then the lower right-hand corner, there it says Archives. Once you click on that link, and you can go back to 2015.
Neighborspaper.com, and the editor and publisher, Tom King, joining us this morning. Tom, good to catch up with you again. Thanks for coming in this morning.
Thank you for having me, Wayne.
All righty, we're back live on the Homefront. No, your time clock is not wrong. That was Wayno with Tom King from about a week and a half ago. It was a good conversation about a great community resource called Neighbors. We have Tom on the program here once in a while. So just a chance to give you a good profile. If you don't know about Neighbors, look for it. It's a great resource. We'll take a short break for a couple of messages, and we'll come back and talk about the Willimantic Downtown Neighborhood Association and Taste to Towns going on right now. Stay with us. All righty, we're back live in the studio. Happy to have you on the home front with us. Taste of Towns just started. It connects restaurants across Windham and Willimantic and Mansfield. It's been an annual event for many years. It's one of the highlights that our local partners have with the Willimantic Downtown Neighborhood Association. I've got two of their members here in the house today. The current chair is Chris McNaboe. I've had Chris on the program many times over the years. And I'm happy to have Dave Wollner with us from the Willimantic Brewing Company. 28 years is coming up for your anniversary. So congratulations on
Thank you.
28 years of good polls. There you go. So thank you.
For sure.
So Chris, I know this campaign just started a couple days ago.
Yeah, January 27th.
Right.
And we're going through February 9th, so we're on day 3 of our Taste 2 Towns. And if you haven't been on the website, please do that. It's taste, the number 2, and towns.com.
Check it out.
And there you're going to find the list of all the participating restaurants from both towns. And it's quite an impressive group of people.
Many.
That are, and we've got some new folks this year, and we've got some tried and true. So we'd like to give you a little bit of an idea of what some of the menu offerings are like for some of the restaurants.
Because they're planning special things for this, not the usual.
Some are takeout, some are sit-down, price-fix meals. So there's something for everyone, really. And this collaboration comes about because of the town of Mansfield, the Mansfield Downtown Partnership, the town of Windham, and our WDNA, Willimantic Downtown Neighborhood Association. And that's our group that meets on the third Monday of every month of local businesses here in town. So it's really a great effort to do that, to get this going, and we're excited that so many people are already taking advantage. David, you said you've already had customers coming in asking for the specials.
Yeah, we started with it yesterday. We have price fixes, as you had mentioned. It's 3 different choices between an appetizer, an entree, and a dessert. And you have multiple options to choose. It's like a little bit of a Chinese menu.
Nice.
And then we also have, if you choose to, for an additional, this is for $35. If you choose to, for $10 more, you can add a cocktail or a mocktail or a beer with each of those courses. Since we are a brewery and we have a full-service bar, we know that often, food tastes better when it's paired with a beverage, and that's something that we've been doing for a long time.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah, a little bit. And, of course, it's still dry January for another day or so hence the mocktails.
And mocktails are really gaining in popularity, too. I bet you've seen a spike up in that.
It's been a trend, not just, for just dry January, but in general, we've seen, people being a little bit more responsible when they're going out. And there's so many great options these days between the non-alcoholic beers that are being made. And then again, we have businesses that are focused just strictly on making something that tastes like the real thing, but doesn't have any of the alcohol.
Yeah, that's great. It's great to have options. And that's what this is all about, options during Taste Two Towns. So one of the things that you don't really think about when you think of a restaurant or a place to eat is the fish market here in town. Well, the fish market has participated the last couple of years we've done it, and they have a $10, a $20, and a $30 level offering. So you can get something really small like a fried haddock sandwich, or you can get on the $20 level shrimp and spinach scampi, and on the $30 level a pan-seared scallop with garlic, mashed potatoes, and asparagus. So a full meal if you want to do that. And that's the fish market.
Yeah.
And then we're really happy to have Pho Delight with us this year. They have some really great things as well. They have the Price Fix menu for $28, and they've got scallion pancakes, chive pancakes, spring roll you can choose from. Then there's entrees and desserts, and you can, for an extra $5, add a Thai beer with that meal. As
Sing Ha, right?
Yeah,
There you
as
go.
David talked about, having nice pairings can make a nice sit-down meal. And they're new to having a bar in their place, so that's nice for them. The Harp, again, another tried and true participant, they have a $45 Price Fix menu, and they have a choice of appetizers, entrees, and desserts as well. And they have vegetarian appetizers or entrees available to switch out if you
Very
are
good.
not eating fish or meat, because they have a choice there. And that's another nice thing. I think a lot of restaurants are becoming more aware of having a variety of foods that are not just the meat and potatoes or even the fish, but to have vegetarian or vegan options. And then our very own A Cupcake for Later. She's got two specials, a $20 special and a $10 special. She's got a 4-pack of cupcakes for $20 with a choice of flavors. And as you know, she's got between 25 and 30 flavors every day to choose from. Wow. So something to please everybody. And everyone loves that maple candied bacon that they have there, so that's part of their package as well at the $10 level. She's also got an interesting thing. I shouldn't say just she, it's also Jim. Anybody who purchases anything from Taste Two Towns menu during this deal will be entered into a drawing for a complete package of cupcakes, or maple candy bacon, chocolate-covered Oreos, chocolate-covered pretzels, cake pops, Buckeyes,
Wow.
all kinds of stuff, and an ACCFL T-shirt. So she's really promoting lots of things outside of just cupcakes.
They're working it.
Cheryl.
You know, when we did the jingle bars through the WDNA, they definitely had the best, I would say, the best layout of everything available between all the different desserts they had. They had some boozy ones. Her confections, it was really the top-notch stop on the jingle bars.
Yeah, she loves participating in that. And it catches people a little bit off guard because you think, oh, it's a pub crawl. Why is a cupcake place participating? But Cheryl and Jim know how to make it work. So.
Yeah.
And then Trigo, as you probably heard earlier, is participating again with a $30 Price Fix menu, and they've got a small Caesar salad, focaccia, and herb oil, and their margarita or cheese pizza. And we know that they're really in their second year of operation now, and they won the Crazies Award this year, so they're pretty pumped about that, and would love to see you to come down there for Taste Two Towns. And David, you've got quite a variety of things that you're offering too.
You know, one of the things I did want to mention is the reason I think Taste Two Towns has been so good for our business and the other local businesses between the two towns is initially we did it and it began right before Valentine's Day and ended around Valentine's Day. And it was very successful. It brought a lot of people from out of town, and it also brought regulars to come in and try the new menu offerings that we had. But we backed it up a little bit last year, and then we backed it up again this year. And by putting it, I think, at the end of January, it's getting people to have that, like, I need to get out of the house. All month, you know, I've made my New Year's resolutions. Yeah. I gave up eating this. I gave up doing that. Let's have a reason to go out and celebrate and help our community, because that's really what it is. Most of the people that come are part of our community, and they want to support local. But, you know, you make a commitment to yourself, and you're like, okay, for this month, I'm not going to do it. Well, we figured if we could ease in a little bit at the end of the month, get some people to come out that aren't maybe practicing dry January or all those commitments. And again, starting it on a Tuesday, so it's a slower day of the week. Hopefully, we bring in some folks. And as we'd mentioned earlier, we already had some people in yesterday that participated. We had some people in today that are trying it. So just for starters, you can get a Chipotle chicken dip with tortilla chips. It's gluten-free. Or cranberry goat cheese radicchio salad with a vinaigrette. Can also be made vegan. Or smoked pulled barbecue beef sliders. And then you can choose a beverage pairing with that, or Fire Engine Red, or Archer Rose bubbly sparkling wine, or a pomegranate martini, or a mocktail. And then if you chose the main course, cedar plank salmon, also could be is gluten-free, linguine with meatballs, roasted half chicken, or we have a vegetarian chicken parmesan, which could also be made vegan. And then menu pairings for that would be our Lou's Legacy Pale Ale, Love Pinot Noir, House Margarita, or an alcohol-free mojito. And then for dessert, strawberry shortcake, or chocolate mousse, or tiramisu, all of which we make in-house, by the way. We have probably 5 or 6 different desserts now that our chef Gary has been putting together.
Wow.
Yeah, I saw him making triple chocolate cake today, making the different layers, squirting on the beautiful chocolate ganache.
Radio. This is high. I'm getting.
Again, we try to make things that you're probably not going to make at home.
Of course.
And then you also don't have to clean up. So, and the desserts are always available to go too. So that's pretty much what we have. It's all for $35. Again, if you add a cocktail or a mocktail or a beer, it brings it up to $45. Still a real bargain.
Yeah,
it is,
for sure.
It is.
And I want to mention, John, one of the newer restaurants taking part this year, El Guanajuato restaurant there in the Bridge Street Plaza.
Yes.
He's been there for 2 years now, and he's really striking a great chord with the community, making authentic Mexican food. And his offering for this Taste Two Towns is the GTO burger, which is a gigantic burger that he makes with all kinds of fixings on it, and a drink that's a 2-in-1 drink. It's a beer inside of a margarita, and it looks phenomenal. And it's really something very special. I highly recommend that you go down there. There's plenty of free parking right in front of his
It's a
spot
new kind
there.
of Boilermaker, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so, huh?
Jesus. Okay.
And of course, Grounded is taking part again this
Yep.
year, and Paula and Jane at the Boba Cafe. They've got some great things that they're offering for all of us. And another new addition is the Good Times Coffee House up in the plaza across from DMV. And he's got quite the following for breakfast items, as well as some really nice in-house made coffees and things that he puts together.
And they're working with some live music once in a while,
Yes.
too. I think Curtis Brand played there. Some other people might be there as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's right.
So it's great to have our supporters, tried and true anchors here in town, like Willie Brew, as a part of this, and the new folks too. And I want to mention that Willie Brew was also named Best Bar and Grill in the 2024 Hartford Current Readers Poll. So they continue to rack up the points with folks that do go in there on a regular basis.
Many bravos.
Yeah.
Many bravos.
And a lot of this is possible because of the sponsors that we have. We've got some lead sponsors, Berkshire Bank, Liberty Bank, and Eastern Connecticut State University and Vanderman Place. They really gave us the money to be able to do the advertising that we've been able to do. We have postcards that have been put in lots of the stores and restaurants so that people can be aware of the event.
Yep.
And we've taken out some advertising on the radio, as you've probably heard on WILI, and we're working on some television as well. So all of that costs money, and we want to make sure that we get the information out so people can take advantage of what we have to offer here in Willimantic.
And the thing that makes me happy to have David and Chris here is that we've been here long enough to know that our town is in a recovery right now. It is bouncing back now. Compared to even 10 years ago, there's such a level of activity that's gone up, and there's more people trying. So it's not just a night out for a meal. It's part of a circuit, and it keeps everything moving. It also keeps money local. A chain restaurant, a local restaurant. You go to a shop at a chain store, the money goes out of the town. It's gone. You go locally, the money stays. It applies to all this economy as well.
That's right. And that's a really important concept that
Yeah.
we want to shop local and eat local and experience other things local. I want
right.
to mention some of the other sponsors.
Sure.
We've had
Yep.
Kindred Crossing, the Mansfield Center for Nursing and Rehabilitation, the Northeastern Chamber of Commerce, a great partner of ours with Willimantic Downtown Neighborhood Association,
Right?
Westford Hill Distillers, the Willimantic Food Co-op, and Zlotnick Construction. All of those donors have been making this all possible, so we're indebted to folks for their long-standing support of things that we do here. And while you're here enjoying these kinds of fun things, there's other things to do in town. I mean, you can always go for a sauna or a massage or take a yoga class or go float over at
Yono.
At Yono, of course. And there's the different shops that are open lots of times in the evening or late afternoon or lunchtime that you can shop around. The Bliss Marketplace has quite a number of shops in there. You can step in there after you've gone for a lunch out. And there's things going on at Eastern Connecticut State University. We know the Chocolate Festival is coming up on Saturday, February 8th. And that includes the Cupid Made Me Do It 2-mile road race challenge across 3 bridges throughout town. The Benton Museum at UConn has an opening reception on the 30th for 3 new exhibitions. The Jim Henson Foundation and the Ballard Institute has a new exhibition there with an opening reception on January 30th. Wyndham Theater Guild has got performances of Pride and Prejudice, Friday,
Yeah.
February 7th.
Yeah, they'll be
and
here
8th.
next week. They'll be here next
Yeah.
week. Yeah.
And Cary Gallery has a great exhibition by Kiana Senki, You Were Too Late. So please stop in to see any of those things that will also complement your time here in town.
All right. Well, our time has flown by. I just want to mention again, taste2towns.com is the website for all the information to follow up. I want to thank David Wollner and Chris McNaboe for being here today, for all the good work you do throughout the year to make our community a little happier and brighter and healthier as well. I wish you a great success with the campaign with everybody, and we'll stay in touch with you about WDNA's activities, Willimantic Public Art. The Hop Fest is coming up, many things during the year. We'll do our part here on the show.
Thanks. There's
Well,
lots
thank you,
going on,
John.
so lots to do in Willimantic.
That's for sure.
Okay, so we're going to have the folks from the Windham Theater Guild here next week. We're also going to have Luke from the Connecticut Tenants Union next week with an update, and we'll have an update from the Cultural Coalition. So have a great week ahead. We'll see you next time.